Welcome back from that ad break. I hope you are all feeling refreshed and are ready to continue with the lesson. In this part of the lesson, we will be looking at the main components that are related to the nervous system. Okay, there we have a diagram of a human figure, and with all the lines. This is called the peripheral nervous system. So it is the brain, the spinal cord, and all nerves that are connected to the muscles and other organs. Then we have another human figure, and here we are basically looking at the central nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord that runs from the base of the brain to the end of the vertebral column. Then next, we have our 5 senses. Now in life sciences, we refer to these as our sense organs. And as you can see in the diagram, we have the ear, the eye, the nose, the mouth with the tongue, and then the hand. The hand is basically to show you that you have the skin as the sense organ covering your whole body. But we use the hand to basically represent the sense of touching or feeling. And lastly, we have our neurons. So we have the central nervous system, as mentioned in the previous slide. There we have mentioned that it consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. Then we have the peripheral nervous system. And there, as we've said, or we know by now, it connects the central nervous system, meaning the brain, the spinal cord there, to muscles and organs. And you basically have all these nerves branching out to reach the certain muscles, all the muscles in the body and organs in the body. Another main component that we are going to focus on is the brain. The brain is located in your skull. It is also protected by your skull. It forms part of the central nervous system. It sends messages to the rest of the body, meaning when something happens, for example, in the external environment, your brain will send a message to your muscles as to how to respond. It has different parts with different functions. Here we are going to look at the different parts. We have what is called a cerebrum. And this is the big part that is called the cerebrum. Then we have what is called the cerebellum, which is this small part here at the bottom. And the cerebrum is divided into different lobes that have different functions and basically are responsible for certain things that happen in our body. Okay, we have the temporal lobe, which is responsible for activities like hearing and listening. Then we have the frontal lobe, which is responsible for things like thinking and memory. Then we have the parietal lobe, which is responsible for language. And then we have the occipital lobe, which is responsible for sight. We then have another part here, which is called the medulla oblongata, and relates well to this lesson, especially the pre-knowledge, when you were asked that, do you know that activities like breathing and the circulation of blood are not controlled by you, but rather are involuntary activities that are controlled by the nervous system. This is called the medulla oblongata and controls and is responsible for controlling involuntary activities like breathing, your heart rate, the circulation of blood. We then move on to the spinal cord. We have said that the spinal cord runs from the brain to the end of the vertebral column. There, it is shown in yellow in this diagram. There is the brain and the vertebral column, which is basically bones that enclose the spinal cord. It is protected by the vertebral column. The brain and the spinal cord form the central nervous system. Then we have our nerves. These are long fibers. They transmit messages from the brain and the spinal cord to the rest of the body and back. Neurons, we have spoken about neurons. These are nerve cells that receive and send messages from the body to the brain and back to the body. So in labeling this nerve cell, we will say that these are the dendrites. That is the cell body. That is the nucleus. That is the axon over there. The axon terminals are found at the end of the nerve cell. And then we have what is called a synapse at the very end of the axon terminals. Then we have our sensory organs. Our sensory organs are responsible for collecting information or stimulus and sending it to the central nervous system through sensory nerves. And when we look at these sensory organs, we know that we have the following. We have ears, we have a nose, we have eyes, we have our skin, and lastly, our tongue. Let us take a quick ad break and we will be back with more. Welcome back. I hope you are ready for this part of the lesson where we will be looking at the main processes that are related to the nervous system. Okay, first process that we will be looking at is one that involves our sense organs. And this involves a sense or a process of feeling. So you have receptors that are found at the end of nerve endings. These receptors cover the skin, muscles, bones, and joints, as well as internal organs and the circulatory system. Receptors respond to pressure, pain, temperature, and movement. Alongside, we have a picture of basically how the process of feeling is involved. So, example, you have a hot pot on a stove. If you touch it, it's basically, how are you going to know that this pot is hot? So your skin has receptors that are able to feel that this pot is hot. Messages are sent through the nerve cells and it reaches the brain there. It reaches the spinal cord and a message is sent to the brain. The brain will then tell the muscles to react and remove the head from the hot pot. It can also be expressed in a flow diagram like this. We have a stimulus. Our stimulus in this case is the hot pot. We have receptors at the end of nerve endings, and these receptors in this instance are found in our skin. We have the coordinator and we have the effector, and then the response will be to remove the hand from the hot pot, and this is basically a message that is sent by the brain. The next process involves hearing. Here, sound waves are transformed into electrical signals. As we can see in the diagram, the electrical signals travel along the auditory nerve to the brain. The auditory nerve is basically a nerve that is found in the ear and sends messages to the brain, and basically sends messages that are saying, I am hearing something right now. The next process involves seeing. So how we see is that light will first enter into the eyes. Then special cells are stimulated within the eye. The cells transmit signals to the brain along the optic nerve. As we can see in that diagram there's a burger, and obviously to see the object, there has to be light in order for you to see that object that is in front of you. And then cells are stimulated within the eye, and these cells tell the brain that I am seeing a burger in front of me, and most likely your brain will respond and say you can eat that burger since it is appetizing. The next process is related to tasting. And then the taste buds, we have taste buds on our tongue that can distinguish between different flavors, namely sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. In that diagram of the tongue, you basically have different sections that have, we say that they have receptors for a strong sense of sourness, for instance, on this side, and a sweet taste there, and saltiness at the tip of your tongue. These receptors work very closely with the receptors in the nose. The taste buds and odor stimuli of food are sent to the brain where it is interpreted and processed. The next process involves smelling, and here, nerve cells in the lining of the nose respond to molecules in the air. They send messages to the brain, which interprets the smell accordingly and recognizes different smells. For instance, if you can't handle certain smells, then you'll respond by sneezing, like in the diagram that is shown there. The last process that is related to the nervous system includes regulating temperature. And here, the nervous system is also responsible for maintaining a balance within the human body. An example is regulating the body temperature. Our bodies need to be kept at about 37 degrees Celsius to work effectively. If the body is too hot, the brain will try and cool the body through increased sweating. If you are very cold, the body will start to shiver and to generate heat energy. Like for instance, there, if you are cold, your brain is basically, while your nerves are sending messages to the brain that say it is cold, maybe let me switch on the heater or get a warm jacket. And if it is hot, your brain is telling you to take off your clothes and get some water to help cool yourself down. In this last part of the lesson, we are going to be looking at health issues that are related to the nervous system. We focus on health issues that affect sensory organs, namely deafness, blindness, and short-sightedness. With deafness, a person is not able to hear. This can affect one or both ears. And then in blindness, there is a loss of vision that cannot be corrected with spectacles or contact lenses. Then lastly, we look at short-sightedness. This is an eye condition that causes distant objects to appear blurred while close objects can be seen clearly. Our last issue that we look at is an issue where we look at the effects of drugs and alcohol on the brain. There are different types of drugs that target different areas in the brain. The brain's reaction makes people want to take in more drugs or alcohol. And this is usually to behave in a certain way. So, alcohol and drug abuse can cause irreversible brain damage. You can lose your memory. You will then have decreased learning capabilities. There is also an increased risk of strokes and heart attacks, and you will have a variety of emotional and mental health issues. That is it from our lesson and from me. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and you have learned a lot. Goodbye.